Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Accelerate Your Life podcast. You got me today, your girl Mallory, and only me. I am going to honestly just jump right into this episode because I'm going to guess this is going to be quite a long one. Obviously, if you're listening to it now, you can see the timestamp below. I'm not going to be shocked if it's like 40 minutes plus because today we are diving all into my hormone journey, which is something that a lot of you guys have been wanting to hear more about. If you're somebody who has been following me on Instagram for a while, you're probably aware that I've been on quite a doozy of a hormone journey the last 3.5 years now. And I share it on social media, but like not honestly a ton. And haven't really done a major update in a while because it's just a lot. Like it really is overwhelming. And to be honest, I've been procrastinating making this episode and like talking to you guys about it because there is just so much to it. Also, I'm still very much a student of like everything that's going on with me, and I'm still learning too. And I just don't want to like misspeak and miseducate. And also, too, I was just being lazy. Like, I really was procrastinating, sitting down and like writing out the timeline and really looking at things and thinking about how I wanted to like present the journey because there's a lot of it's the like perfectionist in me that I'm like, but if I tell it this way, if I started the story here, like where do I start? Like everything ties together, right? um and you guys know if you've been listening to the pod, I just go into these episodes pretty raw. Like I don't plan them. I don't typically have notes. Maybe if I have a guest, I'll like have some semi interview questions thought up ahead of time. But for this one, I really had to sit down and like kind of sketch out how I was going to go about this. And I have 3 pages of a Google Doc in front of me. So buckle in, fam, buckle in. It's going to be a doozy, but you guys wanted this one. And I do think you're going to learn a lot from it because whether or not you have the exact same situation as me, or maybe you're just interested in like, learning more about birth control, how birth control affects you. Maybe you're interested in learning about, how your thyroid hormones affect your metabolism. I think you're going to get something out of this. And hopefully my pain is a little bit of education for you. But yeah, we can dive right in. I mean, I feel like I'm like skirting around what's really going on. But if you are new here, I have not had a period in 3.5 years. But a lot of you guys probably found this podcast from, knowing me and following me on social media, in which I have shared that. So many of you guys probably know that. But long story short here is the big, big like hormone problem. I mean, obviously the problems are like, it's the why have I not had the period, right? But the thing that we're really trying to solve, or the big like red flag of that something is going on, is the fact that it has now been 3.5 years and I have not had a menstrual cycle. And truthfully, it's been more than that. I'm denoting like that 3.5 years from the time when I stopped hormonal birth control. But and we will talk about this and get into this during the pod, but your period, your bleed on hormonal birth control is not a real period. And I was on hormonal birth control for 7 years. So really, I haven't had a normal period in 10.5 years, which is wild to think about. But yeah, I never ever thought that I would be like struggling with hormone issues and like be dealing with this today. And I know we all like, we think we are the exemption to the rule, right? And but the thing is I was a very like healthy, normal girl. I struggled with a little bit of disordered eating in college, but I never had like a full-on ED. I never had any other health issues or anything that would like point to signs that I would be struggling with, hormones and menstrual cycles and all of those things. And if we go back to, I think like when I think about where this all like started, I mean, obviously it started the day, it starts when you're younger, and it starts when you have your first menstrual cycle, and it starts when you decide to go on birth control and put exogenous hormones in your body. But I think for the sake of this podcast episode, I think the place in the timeline of how we got here today and like all the things that have went on and starts around 2020. And for me, circa 2020 is like when I was feeling the best that I ever had in my health, in my fitness. I feel like I had really gotten a handle on training, nutrition. I was in such a better place in my relationship with food. Better place meaning I was like, knew that I needed to eat more and like, but I was still was anal with tracking macros and all those things. But at that point in my life, I was like obsessed with it in a good way. Like I freaking loved tracking macros. I loved getting stronger. I loved going through like reverses and cuts and bulks and all that. So that's what was going on in 2020. And I actually went through my first like actual cut then. My body was super responsive to it. I also went through a period where I like went into a lean bulk and I felt like I was super anabolic. Like I was adding muscle. I mean, this was also post college too, when like I cut out as much, a lot of drinking. So it was a lot of factors of what was really like causing me to just feel so good. And I feel like make the most physical progress in my aesthetic and my physique that I ever had. I definitely looked, I think, the best that I ever had around this time. My strength was there. I was freaking crushing PRs. I could do like 15 pull-ups at this time, which God, I couldn't even do 5 right now if I wanted. My energy was great. I had a good libido. Like we were killing it. Right. And this is when I'm, knowing that I want to get into fitness and nutrition as a career. I'm like starting as a health coach. And what's so ironic about just all of this is, and what's been honestly a big, like kind of imposter syndrome issue for me and at some points has been the fact that I was this person who like, on social media and like I, truly felt this way was like the epitome of like health, the balance, health. I looked good. I was, eating right, all of these things. And then I'm the one that gets these issues, right? And this could be a whole nother topic. I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but I think that the fact that so many people who are quote unquote, like I'm doing air quotes for and if you're listening to the pod and not watching on YouTube, like who are healthy and doing everything right are still the ones in today's society who are seeing these hormone issues. They're the ones struggling with PCOS. They're the ones struggling with missed menstrual cycles. They're the ones struggling with, gluten intolerance, autoimmune issues, all these things. And there's certain like I know there's things for me that like led to this, and we're gonna obviously get into that. But I also do think it raises major red flags in our world today that we need to look at, like things like the toxins that we have in our household products, the things toxins in our environment, the things on our food, that are very out in some ways out of our control, and or we're just not educated on enough to know to make the swaps or avoid certain things. The US is, I think, way too lenient with a lot of the things it allows, and it's causing, we're now in our generation seeing the downstream effects that it has on people's hormones, even the healthiest of healthy. So anyway, another total tangent, but I do think it's worth considering. But anyway, yes, circa 2020, feeling freaking great. We also know that this was the height of the pandemic, right? And September 2020 rolls around, and I am, I'm a single girl. It's the pandemic. There ain't a lot going on. We're not really actively dating. And I was like, I was truthfully told I was on birth control for sexual protection. That's why I went on it at the age of 17. I didn't go on it for other reasons. I didn't go on it for like acne or anything like that. And so when I was in this period where I'm like, well, nothing's really happening in that department. Maybe I should just go off birth control. I've been on it for 7 years. Like this would be a great opportunity to just like go off of it and take a break, maybe that would probably be good, right? Like I which I like that I was thinking that way, but I wish I did more research before I just decided to stop something that I was on for 7 years, because I did decide in September of 2020 to stop taking hormonal birth control cold turkey. And this is the, I think, start of all the troubles we are dealing with today. Now I don't think it's because I stopped it cold turkey. Now, I think like had I maybe done some research and prep differently, it could have maybe went differently, but it's not because I stopped cold turkey. It's because I was on it in the first place that I think like that's the part that plays in all of this. But I do wish that I would have prepped my body a little bit more, because, we'll go a little bit on a little tangent here about like how birth control works, which I didn't understand at this point, is birth control works by it's a pill with synthetic estrogen and progesterone. It mimics your body's estrogen and progesterone. Your body thinks it's estrogen and progesterone. It looks like it has all the, like makeup of that, but it's synthetic. But you have, receptors that estrogen and progesterone bind to, and instead the synthetic estrogen and progesterone does that. So it turns off your body's natural production of estrogen and progesterone because your body thinks, oh, I'm already getting it. Great, it's here, right? But again, it's synthetic, it's not real. So it doesn't do the things that estrogen and progesterone would do, like cause you to have ovulate and produce eggs and then therefore be able to get pregnant and have a cycle, right? And so that is why when I said earlier, like you are not actually having a cycle or you're not actually having a period when you bleed on birth control. And that's why I said I haven't truly had a period in 10 and a half years at the beginning, is because that bleed is simply because that period where you're taking the sugar pills, you're now not putting the synthetic estrogen, progesterone. So your body sheds the uterine lining and you do bleed, but you never actually ovulated. There was never actually an egg. Like you did not go through a actual 28-day menstrual cycle. Okay. Um, so that's just something to note. But then also too, what the pill does when you are on it is it depletes your B vitamins. And so when thinking about coming off the pill, something I wish I would have done is supplemented with a lot of B vitamins prior to coming off, because now my body did not have any of those things during the time I was on the pill, and then after coming, because your body kind of forgets like how to create those. Um, Also, your liver is doing a lot of work kind while it's on birth control, and it causes it to not be as efficient with detoxification. So something else I would have liked to do is support my liver with detoxification, which you need to clear out things, to clear out like, extra like different hormones and different things that your body's trying to clear. And then another thing I would have wished I would have done instead of coming off cold turkey was support my thyroid, because it can also have an effect on your thyroid hormones. This is because being on the pill can create some signs of estrogen dominance, which can affect your thyroid hormones. And these are just things that, like, again, I wish I would have known and prepped my body. And if anybody's listening to this who is considering coming off birth control, consult a healthcare provider, a coach, someone that knows what they're doing when it comes to this. But supplementing with B vitamins, supporting your liver, and supporting your thyroid with supplementation are big, big things I would recommend. And I didn't do. So anyway, I come off hormone and birth control, and I'm just, under the assumption like, oh, great, it'll come back, right? It'll come back eventually. I know it might take a little bit. I was actually working with a coach at this time who, I wasn't working with her for this regard. And so I do not hold her or fault her for anything for any of this. I wish she would have. I mentioned I wanted to come off, and she just kind of did support the just straight coming off. And I wish, that wouldn't have been the case. But she did, let me know at least though that it would probably take a little bit of time. So I, truth be told, didn't really worry about it for the first couple months. I was like, again, it'll come back eventually. No worries. This is kind of nice, right? Like we know as girls having your period's annoying. So I was like, this is great. Great. No period. And then we basically, long story short, is 6 months go by. And so from, yeah, is it 6 months? Well, 6 months go by from that September till the following April, which I denote April because that is when I decided to prep for my first bikini competition, which I'm skipping ahead a little bit. So we'll get there in a second. One thing I want to note is that before I started prep, I was working with now a different coach than the one I just mentioned. I was working with my competition coach, who I was about to go into prep with. And we went through about, 6 months together where we were really pushing my calories up because we wanted to get my calories to a pretty high spot so that when we did cut and prep, I say didn't have to get too low. Trust me, it got really freaking low, which again, we'll talk about in a second. But, we wanted to push up as high as we could to put my metabolism in the best possible spot we could. And also, spend that time putting on a little extra muscle tissue because, you need muscle to be competitive in competing. So my point of saying all this is we had a solid 6 month period there from when I went off the pill until before I started my more restrictive prep, where I was eating a lot. I was eating over 2,200 calories. I was eating over 300 and something grams of carbs. I was not overtraining. I was training about 4 times a week. And so if anything, like from a standpoint of, because it's easy for people to say, well, like you were restricted, you were whatever. I had a solid 6 months there where it was quite the opposite. So I did not get my period during that time though. And I knew obviously that I was not going to get my period when we started prepping because for those of you who maybe don't know what I mean when I say prep, I competed in bodybuilding, specifically the bikini division, which is really just about having lean muscle and then getting as freaking shredded as you possibly can, which obviously requires very low calories and a lot of cardio. So I knew that is not the environment that is going to be conducive to getting a menstrual cycle back. And you may wonder, like, why the hell would you do that then? Great question. Looking back retrospectively, not a good idea. But why would anybody do it in general? I mean, typically you try to do it it's not healthy, but you try to do it in the healthiest way possible with supplementation, which with checking your blood work, having a coach who knows what they're doing. And you kind of hope you just honestly prayer up that like it doesn't F up your hormones for the long run. Which I don't think my prayer was answered in that regard. But anyway, yeah, knew I wasn't gonna get back during prep. I really, really, really wanted to compete. I was in such a headspace where I wanted to compete. I wanted it so badly. And I told my coach, I know we don't have my period, but I really want to do this. Like, can we do this? And he had me do my blood work. He said everything looked good. Looking back, I don't blame him at all. I was literally begging, but it was definitely not a responsible decision on either of our parts to allow me to go into a prep. But we did. We did. We did. We did. So yeah, there started 5 months of decreasing calories. You don't drop down to 1,200 calories right away. I don't think I hit like even 14 or 1,500 calories. It's been a long time, so I'm thinking back, but I don't even think I hit 14 or 1,500 calories till probably like 3 months out. So like my first 2 months weren't too bad. I think I was only at 1,200 calories for the last like 5 weeks, maybe. But yeah, I was at 1,200 calories. For anybody listening, that is not what you do for lifestyle. Please, dear Lord. Again, this is only 5 weeks of like a competition where you're trying to get as like the lowest body fat you can. So just note that this is not normal. But yeah, got down to 1,200 calories, 50 minutes of cardio per day, 15,000 steps a day, just putting my body through the ringer, right? Obviously did not get it during that. And then one thing I should definitely also add in this time period, because I think it's really a combination of three things that led to the perfect storm of me being stuck where I am now. But that was in April that I started that prep. It was 4.5 months of prep. And then also in May of 2021, so 1 month into prep. So really at this exact same time that I'm under eating, like training a ton, doing a ton of cardio. This is also when my business starts to take off, which I'm so grateful for, so thankful for. But with that came more stress than I have ever dealt with in my entire life. Because if anybody knows what growing a business is like, I did not. But it is, I mean, it's not even a full-time job. It's your full-time life. Like I was working probably 100 hours a week, wearing all the hats in my business. Because as you start to grow, I was the coach. I was also the salesperson. I was also marketing. I was also admin. I was everything. And there's a period of time where yeah, you were just keeping your head above water. And I will say also too, like I leaned into that even more because since I was in prep, I couldn't go out to eat. I couldn't like go out and drink with my friends. So instead of being tempted by those situations or like also I didn't want to feel left out. So I was like, well, I can't because I need to work, right? Like I just leaned into work and used that as an excuse. So I worked even more than I like probably normally would. And yeah, I was probably working like 7 days a week. Um, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, or 8 p.m., honestly, some days. And it was like that for about, honestly, 2 years. It started to probably get better year two. But the height of it was while I was prepping. So the combination of coming off birth control, prepping, and growing and scaling my business was the perfect storm for, I think, all of this shit. And just completely whacking out my hormones, my cortisol levels, depleting me of my female sex hormones, which we end up seeing on all the labs. So, which I'll kind of get into now, because this whole time, like during obviously, like I've already said, during prep, I knew I wasn't going to get it back. The first like 6 months before prep, I like spent being like, whatever, it'll come back or I'll deal with it after prep. I'll figure it out after prep. So anyway, then prep ends, still growing my business. Keep in mind the whole time that I'm going to talk here for the future, like business stress does not go away. That continues. But prep ends, you reverse out of it, you begin to slowly increase your calories, you take some of the cardio and stress from that off your plate. Okay, great. I reversed really well, I have to say, for being a first-time competitor, because a lot of people will, go into binging tendencies and overeat, and you can really screw up your hormones doing that too. And I think I reversed really, really well. I put back on the 20-ish pounds that I lost over probably like an 8 month span. So whereas a lot of people can gain those 20 pounds back in like 4 weeks or less. So I did it very slow, very steady, very, responsibly. So I don't think it was really that. But again, even those like first 6 months after prep, I was like, whatever, it'll come back, it'll come back, it'll come back. I don't think it was until probably almost a full year after coming off birth control where I was like, okay, maybe I should take this seriously. Like maybe I should take trying to figure out why my period isn't coming back seriously. It was fun. It was fun while it lasted, not having a period, but like let's figure this out, right? Um, I didn't take it so seriously at the beginning, but I was like, let's just start trying to find something. So step one, first part of the like restoration journey. I went to a traditional OBGYN. Also, pause. I meant to start off this podcast by saying, because this plays into what I'm about to say. This is just, I'm like so late to this. I feel like I should edit the episode and put this at the beginning. Okay. This is just my story. I just want to remind you guys of all of this. This is just my story, my opinions, my thoughts. There are definitely some facts in here. Okay. I'm not going to say like that everything is my opinion. There are some facts. Like I'm telling the truth about, how birth control works and everything. But I want everybody to like take their own opinion when it comes to birth control, doctors, testing, because I'm sharing my opinion and my experience, and there are going to be things that come off like that I'm anti-Western medicine or that I think birth control is bad. And again, my opinions, but I don't think these things are like bad. And I think you need to formulate your own opinions on it. I just think what's super important is that everyone's educated and then can make their own opinions. And unfortunately, I just don't think a lot of women are educated on how this stuff actually works. I wasn't. I wouldn't have been until I went through all of this. So I just want to put that as a disclaimer. Again, this is just my thoughts. Don't take anything I say as Bible. And I hope you also I hope you don't get offended by what I'm saying. Because I support you to have your own opinions. I think that there's a lot of positives that doctors bring, that I think there's a lot of positives that birth control can bring. I just think, again, you need to be educated to make your own decisions. But anyway, I digress. So step one is I just went to your traditional OBGYN. The reason I just put all of that disclaimer is because this is where I got really, really frustrated. I came in and I said, I'm not having a menstrual cycle. Of course, they ask you your history with exercise, with relationship with food. They ask you about like, what do you do? What are your hobbies? I say I'm a bodybuilder. Well, of course, the first thing that she thinks is that I have an eating disorder and I've been under eating and overtraining. And obviously, yes, prep mimicked that. I went through a period of that. But I also, circa 2020, when I was talking to you guys about how good I felt at the beginning there, I was, again, the healthiest I'd ever been. I was eating a ton. I think I had all of those things in check. Again, I had now also, after prep, went 6 months of being back at a really great calorie standpoint, but she just didn't really believe that. I was like, honey, I am eating more than probably every female you have in this office. Like I'm eating well over 2,000 calories, blah, 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 blah. But she just wanted to say that it was my nutrition under eating, send me to a nutritionist, which I'm like, I literally am a nutritionist. And this is the part that gets me. She just wanted to put me back on birth control. She's like, well, you're not having a period. Birth control will give you a period. Let's rewind to the top of the episode where I explained how birth control works. It is not a period. And when I said this, obviously very politely, she agreed, but like, and it wasn't, she was a very nice, she was a women's healthcare practitioner. I actually think she was a PA. And she was so nice. And she did agree with me, but she truthfully, she was like, this is just what they tell us in the textbooks. Like, I understand what you're saying, but this is how they tell us and teach us to combat these issues, which is so frustrating, because that was going to solve nothing. Sure, would I maybe, have, because keep in mind, another reason, like it's obviously I know that I need a menstrual cycle. We know that's like a report card of your body's functioning the way it should. And I want to make sure that I'm like able to get pregnant down the road, all of these things. But another reason that this was important to me is because I was feeling the other effects of like shitty hormones. Like I had low energy. I could not get my drive back for training. Like I went through a period where I freaking loved training and I was pushing myself in the gym and I wanted to push myself to the ultimate like level of competing. And then now I'm like, don't even want to go to the gym and freaking doing like squats, forget it. Didn't want to put weight on anything. So I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't have the same motivation for work. I did not have a normal sex drive. Like this was really tough because I had just entered into a relationship at this point, and like that's obviously an aspect where like you need to have that. And I was really struggling with, is this me? Is this the hormones? Is this the person? Like I just knew I wasn't feeling like myself. So that was a big complaint that I wanted to fix. And so I say all that because would have going back on the pill fixed those things? Probably. It would have because, it's gonna again give me that synthetic progesterone, estrogen, some of those things that like make you feel the balance that you should. But it wasn't gonna solve whatever the root problem is for the reason that I wasn't having a period. And then, what my whole thing was, okay, great. Well, what happens in 5 years when I do wanna start trying for kids and I do want to like come off the pill and I'm going to have the same exact problem that I'm having now. And now we have to go through all of this again. And I'd rather just do it now. And she just wasn't on that train. She just kept saying, go back on birth control because her concern too, and this is valid, but was, I had no progesterone. Like I had no, like all these tests were showing that I had no progesterone and estrogen, which those things are important for other things like bone density, that kind of stuff. And so her concern was like my bone density health. And so like she just wanted me to be on the pill and have that progesterone to fix those things, which I get, but again, not solving the root cause. So um, that was that experience. And I was like, I am now done with the traditional doctor and I'm going to go seek out other paths. So the next thing I did was went to a functional doctor. This was in person. There was a reputable one in Charlotte that was really well recommended, had a very long wait list. So at this point, it's like August of 2023. No, August of 2022. It's August of 2022. So we are now almost a year. This doesn't, hold on. Yeah. Okay. So 2020 is when I stopped taking birth control. So we're 2 years. We're almost 2 years into having no period at this point. So I go to the functional doctor. And besides, we redo all my blood tests, which are again showing very low progesterone, very low like FSH, LH, your normal female sex hormones. We also do a Dutch test, which is a dry urine. Oh my God, what does it stand for? Hold on, let me Google it really quick. What does Dutch? I know this. Dried urine something. Thyroid hormone cortisol, maybe? That's my guess. Dutch test stand for dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. I wasn't close, but it does test for thyroid hormones and cortisol. So it was a fair guess. But yeah, dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. So what you do is you pee on these strips 5 times throughout the day and then you mail them in and they give you everything that your standard doctor does not test for, that we need to see. And long story short, what came back on that was not surprising. I literally had no estrogen, no progesterone, very, very low testosterone. And there's on the test, it shows like where your optimal range is. And then there's also the postmenopausal range, because when you go through menopause, your estrogen and progesterone pretty much plummet. And that's what stops you from having a cycle. Because remember, we talked about how those are the two hormones that cause you to have a menstrual cycle. So it's normal to have those be very low when you are postmenopausal. Well, my ranges showed up that I was postmenopausal. And at this point, I am 25. So not great. And also my thyroid hormones, it had this, they showed up. Well, here's what I like to point out about the reason I like going like the functional health route is my thyroid hormone showed up in range. And I'm doing air quotes because there is a standard Western range for um, all tests, like blood test, hormones, anything you're trying to test. But keep in mind that the standard range is based off the average population, which we don't have the healthiest population. It's also very, very wide. And it also is a snapshot in time. So a normal doctor would have said, oh, your thyroid's fine. However, because I had prepped and we had done blood tests before that, we had done blood tests after prep. I had also done a blood test when I went to the, regular doctor. I had multiple snapshots of my thyroid hormone over a year span. And by this point, we could see that it was moving in the wrong direction. So if you just looked at the most recent one, you'd be like, okay, like it's fine, you're in range. But when you compared it to all of mine and my history, we could see the trend of what was happening, and it wasn't good. I was definitely trending like hypothyroid. So that was something that we wanted to look at. So at this point, we decide to supplement with estradiol, to just help kind of hopefully remind my body like, hey, here's some estrogen, like real bioidentical estrogen, kind of kickstart it into a cycle. But this just really never happened. And while I'm glad I went to this functional doctor, I don't think it was the right setup for me. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, we meet, we go over all of your tests. I kind of give you a protocol and then like you let me know when you need to like check in or things aren't working. I felt like I needed a little bit more of like, hey, this is what's supposed to happen by now. Oh no, it's not. Okay, like let's do this. And it was very expensive. So it kind of ran its course. I also moved, was moving to Texas, and she was a local in-person doctor, so we just kind of split there. And then this fast forwards to kind of currently where we're at. So the third now like step that I've really, or person I guess I've worked with that I've tried to take, we've now taken multiple steps like within this step, but is now we're at around April 2023. So we are 2.5 years into having no period. And I go to this business retreat and I meet this girl, Sierra, who is awesome. We end up clicking as like best friends right away. But she's also so smart. And we begin to talk and I begin to kind of tell her about my situation. And she's like appalled by a lot of the, things that other doctors and coaches and things have told me so far. And she looks at my labs and she's like, I can fix this, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm super skeptical at this point in time because the amount of money at this point, and it gets even worse, that I've probably already spent and time and energy is just like, is this gonna work? Like I don't know. But she made me feel very, very secure and confident, like that she could help. So I did decide to start working with her, and I still am currently working with her. And so we'll kind of go through the things that her and I have done together. Well, or spoiler alert, still don't have a period. I think you guys probably already know that, but I do feel like we are on the right path. And I do currently feel the best that I felt in the past 3 years, 3.5 years. And so we'll kind of talk about how we got there. So anyway, I start off with her by doing so many tests, more tests than I had done. We do another Dutch test. So because you do need to get those refreshed every like 6 months. And it had been about, I think, a year and a half, uh, or maybe no, maybe it only been like 8 months since I had done the other one. But anyway, we do it. It comes back pretty similar. Cortisol. I didn't mention cortisol in the last one, but it was whack. It was whack on this one too. Whack, 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 whack. So there's two types of cortisol. You have your free cortisol and you have your metabolized cortisol. And basically like free cortisol is how much is like floating around in your system, and metabolized cortisol is like how much your body's actually like metabolizing, excreting, getting rid of. And you want your free cortisol to be low, you want your metabolized cortisol to be higher. My free cortisol was super freaking high, way over the like max range. And my metabolized cortisol was super freaking low, like way under. So yay. Progesterone and estrogen were still non-existent, below postmenopausal ranges. My testosterone had gotten a touch better, I think, but still not good. So that was a Dutch. And then we also did, and I'm going to talk through all these because I think you guys find it interesting, but we also did a MRT test, which is a food sensitivity test. I thought this was super cool. It's a blood test, and then they take your cells, your blood cells, and they place them on, I'm going to say this wrong, I don't remember actually, the histamines or something like of food, of a ton of foods, and they see how large your blood cells get, because that's like your blood cells getting inflamed, and the larger they get, the more sensitive like and intolerant to these foods that you are. So I did that. And the purpose of this is that we wanted to eliminate as much inflammation as possible, because really like what we're trying to get at here is, what is the underlying reason that my body does not feel safe to basically like have a period and aka have kids? Because you have to think it from all of this from the very like basic evolutionary perspective, is when you're having any of these issues, like your body's main priority is to keep you alive and to reproduce. And so if any of these things like shut off or aren't working properly, your body is, that's a defense mechanism to like keeping you safe. So it's turning off my menstrual cycle because for some reason my body does not feel like it's a safe environment to get pregnant and have a kid. So that's what we're trying to figure out, right? So like we're like, okay, well, inflammation, maybe inflammation from foods, that could be a stressor, right? So we want to eliminate that. And so I did the MRT test and I had to cut out a lot of foods that I scored, more sensitive to for a period of time. And the thing with this one is that like it's more of like a cut it out and then you can reintroduce it, and hopefully your body has like now gotten better at being able to deal with it. So these are not foods I had to cut out long term. I'm back to eating all of them except for gluten. But I did have to cut out a lot for a period of 12 weeks. So it was 12 weeks, or actually no, yeah, 12 or 16 weeks, with all of those foods cut out, plus no alcohol, no gluten. I am still supposed to be very, 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 I mean, I'm really supposed to be no alcohol, but like very limited alcohol and no gluten. I will say I'd say I'm 90% perfect with the gluten. Thanksgiving or like little bites out with my friends. If we're at a restaurant, there's something that looks really good. Like I have it. And I can take ownership of the places here where I haven't been perfect. And I know like when I complain about, not getting to a certain point, I have to be able to look at like, okay, well, I'm also creating trade-offs. I'm well aware of that. But I'm pretty perfect with the gluten. Like I don't cook it at home. I try to order it, not out if I can. Alcohol has been where I've been a little bit more lenient. I've definitely been the lowest with alcohol I ever have in my life, or like least of it. But I have my times, and y'all, if y'all follow me on social media, you've seen it. Um, but yeah, so that was something that we did. But for those first 4 months, I was very strict. No alcohol, no gluten, none of those foods. So we had, yeah, that 4 month period of very, very much strict. We also did a GI map. So this is a like gut kind of show up, see what's wrong with your gut. The reason we care about this is because like the gut and hormones are so connected. And if you are having any gut issues, it's going to show up as a stressor. Your hormones are going to be affected. I can't like my brain is not like I'm talking about too much right now to try to go into all the detail of how that all works, but just long story short, gut and hormones super connected, and one of the first things to fix any hormone issues is to look at the gut. This came back from me having signs of E. coli, H. pylori, and candida, which is all just like not great stuff. It's like I'm blanking on the word. Just like pathogens and things that you don't want. So we went on protocols for those to eradicate those. That included a ton of supplementation, specific things I had to cut out of my diet, like candida, for example, likes to feed on sugars and fermented foods. So I had to cut out things like that. So that was part of that 4 months of being really strict. And yeah, supplementation. We also did an HTMA test, which is a hair test that tests for toxins. So things like mold, nutrient deficiencies. To be honest, I cannot remember what that one really showed up on. I don't think it was anything major. Like I don't think I had signs of mold and that kind of stuff. But we did do that test. And I think we did do another one. We did like an oat test. And I might be actually confusing the oat and HTMA and what they show. The HTMA might actually be more nutrient deficiencies. So she just added a bunch of supplementation for me from that one. And then I think the oat later on we did was more of like the toxins, which again, I don't think showed anything major. But yeah, what I learned from all of that was we need to identify the root cause. Like, and I knew that too. At least I knew enough of that to like not accept just the birth control pill, right? When that doctor suggested that, because again, I knew that wasn't gonna fix the root cause. But even more so with Sierra, I've learned like, okay, it's not only like, okay, well, I'm not having a period because my thyroid levels are low. It's like, well, no, well, we have to figure out like why are your thyroid levels low and then address that because other people may even want to say, well, instead of, just the root cause or the birth control band-aid, okay, well, we can see that you're probably having issues because your thyroid levels are low. Like, let's fix that. But we even want to go a step further, don't just band-aid the thyroid. Like, why are the thyroid levels low? And then like, it's like the why, and you have to get down to the root cause. And again, I think it just all relates back to the perfect storm of those trifecta that I mentioned earlier, the coming off the birth control pill, after 7 years, the prep, the stress that really did all of this. And even though those were at this point 3.5 years earlier, I think my body was still very much feeling the effects. Because keep in mind, like I mentioned throughout this whole time too, the work stress has not lightened. That's something that's changed in the last like 2 months for me, actually. So it was 2.5 years of a ton of work stress. And yeah, I think that those were the big things. The stress, truly, like when we're saying what's the root cause, 100% it was stress. And it was lifestyle stress, probably most of it, but it was also like the stress of prep, the stress of my body coming off birth control, the stress of GI issues. But your body just perceives stress as stress. It doesn't matter which one of those things it comes from. And something that I've learned of like why stress causes all of this is that pregnenolone, so you have a hormone pregnenolone, and pregnenolone is the precursor hormone to almost everything. Like everything, I think like DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, like all of these things are created from pregnenolone. Also, so is cortisol. And there's a thing called the pregnenolone steal. And when your body is in a chronically stressed state, your body steals more pregnenolone in order to make more cortisol because it wants to solve the stress issue first, because that's like the fight or flight response. And we're only supposed to be in that like fight or flight mode very like acutely, right? But in today's world, a lot of us spend it chronically stressed. And I absolutely was. And so it's just trying to pump out more and more and more cortisol. So it takes this pregnenolone to make more cortisol. And now there's no pregnenolone to make progesterone and other sex hormones. And then therefore not having a cycle. So what did we do with all of this information? Our first step, because I'll kind of go through like it's obviously I'm talking to you guys right now. This episode is in March. So we are almost a year, March of 2024. So we're almost a year in. I started working with her, like I said, in April of 2023. It's almost been 12 months at this point. And there's a lot we've done. So I'll kind of go through that. Step one was, like I said, that first 4 weeks, we just really tackled the dietary stuff, the GI stuff. We threw a fuck ton of supplements, excuse my language, at the GI, like the things that came back on the GI map, the H. pylori, the E. coli, the Candida. We, was very strict on my diet there for a little bit. And then also tackling the lifestyle stress. And this was by far and has been by far the hardest one, because what the frick does that even mean, right? Like life, we have to go on with it. I'm like, I have to work, and I think something that was huge for me is just really learning how to control my mind, because in reality, like our reality is our perception. And when I feel stressed and like let myself get stressed and mentally let things blow up bigger than they are, I'm only hurting myself, right? I'm just feeling what my mind is thinking. So I had to really learn to like adopt the mindset that, okay, it's literally just life. Like it's not a big deal, but that's been by a way the hardest one, especially too, because I feel like since moving to Austin, which I did in July, sorry, I know there's so many dates in this podcast, but I do feel like the happiest and the lightest and the least stressed that I've ever been, which it takes a long time for your body to catch up. I have also learned that. And so, when she keeps telling me, I love you, Sarah, but like she kept telling me, like, we just need to regulate, we just need to be stressed. I'm like, what more can I do besides sitting on the couch and twiddling my thumbs? Because like I am just having fun with my friends. I do feel like I've made a lot finally at the place in my business where I have a great team. I've outsourced a lot. I'm not like killing myself every day. I'm like, what else can I do? But anyway, that's pretty much in a nutshell what we focused on for 6 or so months. And unfortunately, we didn't really get anywhere, no period later. But I didn't give up and she did not give up. And I still felt confident that, she was the one to help me. So then we moved to bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which is still kind of what I'm doing, but there was like two phases of that. The first was like over the counter supplementation that again, it's actual. So unlike the pill where it's like synthetic estrogen and progesterone, now I was using like real, I didn't do estrogen, but real progesterone, actually pregnenolone. And no, I wasn't doing progesterone. Sorry. Real pregnenolone and testosterone. Again, the pregnenolone thought, instead of going straight to progesterone, she was like, well, let's just try to have more pregnenolone so that we can kind of counteract the pregnenolone steal. Because again, my DHA, other things were low. So we're like, pregnenolone will help with all of those things. And so we did that. And those again are over the counter. So they're not super high dosage. And I just don't think it was enough for me because we did that for a little bit of time and I really still didn't feel any different. And we definitely got to the point where I was like, I want the quick fix. Like, but again, it's not really quick because I've been doing this for so long. And I was just so frustrated because keep in mind this whole time, like I mentioned, I'm not feeling good. Like I'm not feeling energized. I don't have a sex drive. I don't have a like drive for work at all. Like what is the word I'm looking for? I don't want to push myself. I don't want to train. Like I just don't feel like me. And so I want that fixed. My body, I haven't really talked about my body comp either, but like my body comp, I feel like changed a lot during this time. I wasn't able to control it. I was not able to eat anywhere near the amount that I used to be able to, but still like would gain weight. Like I just was seeing all of the effects. Okay. So I'm just so frustrated. And I'm like, Sierra, let's just freaking do real HRT. Um, and the reason that you like that people are like want to try to fix it before real HRT is truthfully, I don't totally understand because I'm like, why couldn't we have just done this earlier? But it is expensive, but so is everything freaking else that I did. There is no guarantee that you're not going to have to do it forever. So I now understand that there is a chance I'm going to be on this forever. Um, and you just like ideally would like to fix it through natural ways. And then like there are Western med thoughts of like not being on it, but whatever. I think it was the right thing for me. But really what this means is now like clinical HRT. So what like this is when you think about like bodybuilders injecting themselves with steroids, it's kind of what this is. However, mine is prescribed, it is for medical reasons, and it's because I have zero. So this is just to like bring me up to normal standards. But That is the route we went. So I now currently am doing injectable testosterone 2 times a week. So every Monday and Thursday, I do have to inject myself with TRT. And then I do progesterone in pill form nightly. And I will do that every night until I get a cycle. And then hopefully once I get a cycle, we would go down to like it's either 10 or 14 days of the cycle, like the part of your cycle where you actually produce progesterone. Because the way that you have like your follicular luteal phase, your ovulation is that like estrogen, progesterone goes in waves throughout. And there's like part of your phase where progesterone is higher and estrogen is lower. And that's like one phase and etc. So we would just have progesterone in that part of the phase. But right now I literally have zero. So we're just doing it nightly. And yeah, that's kind of the plan until we induce a cycle. And I will say that I'm now probably 5 weeks in to doing this. And this is the best I have felt the last 3 years. Like, and that I like want to cry saying that because it's just been such a long road and it's not over. Like I still have not had a cycle, but I feel the effects. I feel like I'm ready to get up in the morning. I'm still not like 100% training the way I used to, but like I don't hate going to the gym. Like I like going to the gym. I feel more focused in work. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of a sex drive back. Like I just feel so much better. And now there was one week where I didn't feel good, but I think it's like in the right way. I think that like I went through a week where the progesterone was high and like it felt like my luteal phase where like I was kind of brain foggy and sad, like and crying for no reason. And I'm like, oh my God, is this what it feels like to like be a normal girl and have hormones and have a cycle? It wasn't fun, but I was like, okay, I'll take it. Like I just want to feel something, honestly. Like I feel like and that week made me realize that the last 3 years I've just been a flat line. Like there's no highs, there's also no really lows. And I want to freaking feel my, the normal emotions of a cycle and like go through it. And so, yeah, it's just been, I just feel like we're finally on the right track. So that's kind of currently where we're at. This was such a long podcast. But that's kind of currently where we're at. I will keep you guys updated on hopefully when we do get a cycle. She says she's seen it at anywhere from like 3 weeks to 3 months. Again, I'm about 5 weeks in. I will say I'm also very, very anxious because this is kind of the last shot. Like I don't know where we go if this doesn't work. Like I have no idea. This is like the last ditch effort. So I'm crossing my fingers that like within the next 2 months, honestly, that I will get a period. Because again, it's a very scary thought of like what next, because haven't really talked about this either. God, this could be such a long episode, but I've went through my phases of being terrified of, can I get pregnant and what's that going to mean for like, cause having kids is something that I've just always assumed that I want. I feel very far away from that in my stage of life. And I've never been your classic girl of like, oh my God, so cute babies. I can't wait. But who knows? Part of that could be the hormones or lack of them. But I assume that I will. But like dating and like having that conversation with partners and being like, I don't know if I literally have the ability to have kids, like is really scary and has made me, yeah, just emotional. And I'm trying not to like get emotional now, but it's just something that terrifies me. And I just do want to figure this out because I don't know what that all looks like if it's not the case. Like there's that potential. All my other labs like point to the fact, because there's other things you can look at to show like, well, do I still have that ability? And like they all look good, but I have to have a cycle for that to happen, obviously. So, yeah, anyway, I'm trying to think what else I wanted to add. I've definitely gotten rid of a lot of the supplements that I was on. Now I'm just kind of on some basic things like fish oil, calcium, something for methylation because I struggle with that. But like, God, guys, I was on so many at the beginning. Because one common question I know I will get, so I will answer this, and I'm an open book when it comes to this shit. But how expensive was all of this? In the last year alone, keep in mind this is a 3.5 journey I've been on, but I just added up the last 12 months because I don't even know, the other ones to be honest, and I don't honestly want to know because I think it would make me vomit. But in the last 12 months alone, I have definitely spent somewhere between like $15,000 to $20,000 on all of this, between supplements, between functional doctors, practitioners, coaches, tests, labs, the HRT. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. But I'm trust me, I am walking the walk when it comes to investing in your health. Okay. So, yeah, I think that's really it. I guess like the other thing I had written here is just the biggest things that I'm doing now to help support this, in addition to, of course, the HRT, which I kind of talked about. Like, will I do those forever? I don't know. The goal of those is to induce a cycle, and then hopefully my body kind of like remembers, oh, okay, this is like how to produce testosterone and progesterone and all of that. But that's kind of TBD. To me, again, like the potential of having to be on it forever at this point outweighed the cons of that outweighed, or the pros of it, I guess, outweighed the cons. I'm also just really trying to, work on stress management, and have definitely spent a lot of time learning to be okay with not always achieving. It's a very hard thing for me. But I feel like the last few months I've been like, you know what, it's okay. Like, I can go play pickleball at 4 p.m. or I don't have to work on Saturday. It's okay. Like, just being okay with like chilling. Really, really focusing on ingredients when it comes to food, like ingredients in my foods, labels, things, just trying to not to have like a lot of, artificial ingredients, trying to eat really organic, especially things like fruits and veggies that we eat the skin of. Those I always buy organic. Animal products, I buy organic. Okay, I'll actually say like 90% of the time of those things. Sometimes like if the store's out, I'm not going to go to another store. Or sometimes if I'm just like feeling really cheap, maybe. But 90% of the time, I really prioritize organic and good quality ingredients. I've made a lot of non-toxic swaps in my household with like cleaning products, filtered water, paraffin-free candles, like things like that. Just being really trying to be very cautious, because those all play in hormones, which I'll do a whole nother episode on that sometimes. I think it's time for me to stop here because this has been quite a long episode. And I could talk about this forever and ever, but if any of you guys are still listening and cared about this whole thing, I appreciate you. I know I've gotten so many questions, and every time I post about it, which again, I rarely do because there's so much to it, but every time I post about it, I do get questions or comments or suggestions, and sometimes just solidarity messages of people going through the same thing. So I hope that this helped. One thing I will say is if you do listen to this, I do ask for you to not message me any recommendations. That is something that happens a lot. And while I know everybody is doing it out of the purest intentions, I have worked with a lot of people, a lot of professionals. I've went through a lot of things, and without knowing all of my background in labs and tests, like it's just probably a suggestion that either we've already like looked at, or, and it's hard when you get so many things thrown at you. I really appreciate what somebody's trying to do with it, but I don't need that. So, but any like solidarity messages, any like questions that you may have, I am an open book, so feel free to message me. And I hope this was a helpful pod, and yeah, maybe we'll do a part 2 when I hopefully get my period. I think that is it, y'all. I'm gonna go rest my voice now because I think this is the longest podcast episode. Again, if you're still here, appreciate you, love you. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all next week. Don't forget to come and tune in next week. Talk to y'all then.